Hello everybody, and welcome back for another episode of Indie Impressions. My name is Nick, and today we're going to be checking out LSD Revamped by developer Figglewatts. This is a modern-day readaptation and modernization of a very popular cult classic called LSD Dream Emulator that was exclusively a Japanese PS1 game. And in fact, it's a bit of a notable thing just because I've actually covered that game in the Indie Impressions series before I actually knew that this was going to be a series on PC games specifically. So it's literally the only non-PC indie quote-unquote game that I've covered in the series. And I'm sure you could debate, since it was released on PS1, whether or not that qualifies as indie. I don't want to get into any of that. All I want to say is it's a real weird experience, and I'm glad that somebody's taking the time to try and do something with it, because I think there's some real meat to it. Now, what we're going to be looking at today is an alpha version of this game, so it's not very far along, but there is enough meat to it that I can say right now this is already looking really promising, and I did want to give it some coverage for that very reason. So if you're wondering what is LSD Dream Emulator, or LSD Revamped in this case, it is a game that allows you to kind of probe the mind of possible abstract dream permutations and walk around in them, try and make some really bizarre links between areas, and, well, it's very hard to describe, I've just found out. Basically, imagine just a bunch of bizarre landscapes that, by touching any of the walls, you teleport to another random landscape, and through all of those, you kind of create what is a theme, or some kind of stitching narrative between them, which then culminates as, you know, something you could call a dream, quote-unquote. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's look at these settings real quick. This is actually a Unity game, so it does have a lot of the modern trappings that we like to look for here. We've got input, so we can map our key bindings. We can use mouse turn, which obviously, since it's a PS1 game, we didn't ever have a mouse as an option before. We've got options for screen resolutions and quality, as well as full screen or windowed. We've got change cycle. It says currently LSD. I think what this means is later on, once all of the features from the original game have been added, maybe you'll be able to toggle between the modern adaptation and the original classic version of the game, so it'll take out any kind of additions to the gameplay, if that makes sense. Then it's got music and SFX volume, both of which have their own sliders. Looks like they're not even for, well, I guess the text is not even, whatever, doesn't matter. Looks like we've got all the options that we generally tend to look for. There's a graph here. This graph tends to map where your dreams lie on a scale of a variety of different things, although I don't believe they're marked at this very moment. Usually it says like manic and sad and like excited and some other option, and it sort of puts them in some scale there. I'm not really sure how it calculates them, but I guess it has to do with where you end up, and it takes like an average of the different locations. Anyway, I've talked for far too long here. You'll notice we're on day 5 of our dream experience, so let's hit start and get to the abstract dreaming moments. So this is kind of an unsettling one to spawn into. Usually this game is very lively and excitable. In this case, this is one of the darker, creepier areas, and I should mention, none of the NPCs have been implemented, so if anybody that has been around this game for long knows anything about, you know, the various environments that we find ourselves in, usually getting to this one means very bad things for our character. In fact, usually there's a dangerous character that seems to follow you and will show up from time to time, and you don't... Oh. Apparently, that one NPC has been implemented. I think they call this the Gray Ghost, am I mistaken in saying? So yeah, this dude will chase you around forever. And once you see him, I think he'll chase you from all of your dreams into other dreams. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I haven't played a lot of this, but he'll walk right through walls. Yeah, at least that's what he used to do. And it's just a very unsettling thing. You don't want to know anything about this. Sort of like the Grim Reaper chasing you. Oh, geez. It wasn't anywhere near me, but apparently it touched me. Okay, so what we can do here is wander around, look for various things, take in the sights, whatever we want to do with each area. There's not a lot to interact with. In fact, there's almost nothing to interact with. That NPC in particular is one of the only things that we could actually touch or have an experience with. Later on, there will be some other things like freaky giant baby heads and lions that'll chase you, kind of. We've got suns that'll come down at you and all kinds of creepy stuff like that. Stuff that you would never expect. So we're wandering around in sort of a micro-macro city. We can touch into one of the walls here, which I think is probably what we're going to go ahead and do. I'm looking for a particularly good wall to touch into, but I don't think I'm going to find anything especially interesting here. So let's just touch this wall right here and see where that takes us. Alright, and now there's music. So that's another thing. That area in particular is a bit of an anomaly because it's one of the only ones that doesn't really have a theme, which is very unsettling to run into when you've gone through 20 other places that all had music playing. The other thing I've noticed that's a little bit different from the original game is I believe every tile that you walked on had its own sound effect that played. In this version of the game, I'm not sure that happens, or at least not yet. Maybe that'll be implemented later on. For now, it seems like we've just got this one static tapping sound for all of our running. So this is a bit of a serene, kind of calming place. It's a nice change of pace from where we just were, where everything seemed very foreboding. I'm going to run right into this pillar here and see what that does for us. Faded to blue, and oh, we've got like a very happy, excited, kind of like electro-pop, J-pop kind of feeling place, and we find ourselves in a green slime bath with pyramids coming out, or maybe that's just supposed to be grass, I'm not sure. What is this supposed to be? Is this the Sphinx? It's like the Sphinx minus the head. Maybe it's just like a mausoleum or something. Then over here we have like the Empire State Building for some reason. And I guess we could probably just check out the background. You have a red sun off in the distance, or a pink sun. Yeah, let's just touch this building and see what this does. Oh, it takes us right back here. Alright, so another thing I've noticed, and again, this is just due to this being early in development most likely, is there's not a lot of different locations. I think I've noticed maybe about 15 or 20 of them so far. All ones that are, you know, adapted from the original game. Of course, I haven't seen any new ones yet. But the other thing that's a little difficult about trying to give a critique on this is, well, first, it's in alpha. Second, it's also a game that sort of expands a little bit the more you play it. I guess you could liken it a little bit to The Binding of Isaac in that the more you play it, the more days go by, the more things show up, and the more things permutate and change. So right now we're still fairly early in our experience, and only on day 5, as I showed you in the beginning. And that might be why I never saw the gray ghost that I mentioned earlier. I think maybe he only will show up after a certain amount of days that go by. I'm also really curious how this developer figured out how to even implement stuff in the way that the original game was done, just because I don't think you could really deconstruct it very easily. Being that it was a PS1 game, I'm not really sure how you would break into the code. Well, maybe you could deconstruct it some other way that I'm not familiar with, but there's a lot of very subtle and kind of like behind-the-curtain things that happen with this game, very, you know, hidden, enigmatic things that without really being able to talk to the person who developed it or like see their patch notes or their designer notes, design document rather, I don't know how you would come up with a lot of the things that you could do with this if you're trying to emulate the original, which, you know, seems like the developer's taken very great care to try to do. By the way, in case you didn't realize, I am running and have been running for a long time. This is me walking. I imagine you don't want me to do this, so running is preferable here. The game does look a lot better, I must say. Combined with the fact that you couldn't really control the character very well, the collision was really strange, and the way you move around was also very strange. There's also just a much higher level of fidelity going on here. Things are much sharper, the aliasing is much sharper, and just in general, everything feels much more clear. I think even the draw distance is probably a bit longer than it used to be. Alright, so this time we find ourselves walking through some sort of ancient Japanese town here. Maybe not ancient, but old Japanese town. And we've got some finger snapping playing in the sound effects for some reason. Maybe I'll find my way over to... I don't know, I think there was like a hole in the ground in this area at some point. Maybe I'll go fall into that. That usually wakes you up. There's a few things you can do. Like, you can't lose the game per se, but you can give yourself a bad time by falling into positions that are not so good. It's also going to be interesting to see what the developer does with this as far as emulating some of the quirkier aspects. Because I'm thinking in the emulated version of this emulated version of this emulated game of a dream, wow, quite a statement there. There was an issue with like the way that the water textures worked, and they kind of just flickered on and off a whole bunch. And I wonder if the developer is going to go for that kind of a process to try and make it look like, you know, the kind of strobing texture pack version. I almost don't even mind if that's the case. Oh, this does actually connect. I didn't realize that this would go back and forth like that. Let's see if I can go back out, though. to kind of make this into an interconnected world. There's not a lot of places that have this sort of an option. No, it does. Okay, so I guess I can actively go in and out of there as I choose. Oh, the tiles are actually working on this particular spot. You can hear they make a very different sound here than here. So maybe just certain tiles have been implemented so far, and that's okay. Let's touch this wall. Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is one of the more crazy sounding soundtrack moments. And we'll wander right into what appears to be some sort of internal organ world. We're like dancing through somebody's intestines here. One of the creepier places for sure. I think I remember something scary happening in this at one point. Maybe this was just a bad pairing of moments. That's kind of an interesting way that this all works too, is that you can end up with a bad night or a bad dream in a place that you've been before that wasn't bad, and then all of a sudden it becomes much more creepy for one reason or another. Like, various little tweaks will happen. Maybe the sound effects will change, you'll encounter a different NPC, or just the whole mood will feel different for one reason or another. So we'll run into the pyramid this time. Oh, I can climb up the pyramid and see over the top of that wall. Soundtrack is really strange here. I like it a lot, actually. This sounds like what it should have sounded like in the last area. It sounds a little bit like a stomach gurgling. Oh, wow. Alright, so it seems to just be sending us back to the same place so many times. Oh, this is a much more peaceful version of where we just were. Let's not even go in there. Let's touch this beehive wall. See where this takes me. Ah, okay, here's one of the crazy areas. I remember in the PS1 version of this, there was actually like a procession of knights, or like clockwork, some kind of clockwork enemies that would walk around and sort of just like raise their guns or swords or whatever up in the air. I don't think any of that stuff is here yet, but let's go in this little temple arena area and see what's up with this. I also remember walking on this floor would make a very annoying sound that sort of sounded like a baby crying or something. Oh, this area looks like it's not been textured yet, so I guess maybe we're not supposed to be here yet. I wonder if I can walk up the side of this. Nope. And I guess that was enough for me to touch it to send us back to Beehive World. Are these two connected somehow? I feel like I've gone back and forth so many times. So if I go out of this one, where does that put me? Endless grassy fields. Ah, this is where I can fall into that hole and wake up if I wanted to. Oh, what is this? There's one texture that looks different. It's got a little bit of foliage on it for some reason. I think the possibilities for this game are endless, and I think it's really awesome that we're taking the time to not only remake this, but to potentially add stuff to it. Just because I'd love to see where you could even go with something like this. Like, being an American, I think there's a lot of experiences here that are more tailored towards an Asian audience, and I think it'd be kind of interesting to see how those two cultures might crash together if you start to assimilate a little bit of both. And I kind of wonder, like, if somebody would even attempt something like that, or maybe create the option to have plug-in packs for this game, where developers or other users could make their own experiences, their own soundtracks, their own texture packs, their own models and landscapes, level design, and all that, and just sort of integrate it all together into one big mishmash, and give them a tonality, give them some tagged themes, and then watch as the game kind of stitches together the progression for the player based on how it feels that your path is going on this dream. I think there's a lot of options there for people to really go nuts with something like this. I could imagine if this wasn't something that maybe we have to be a little quiet about, since I'm not sure what the licensing is with LSD Dream Emulator. This would be really sweet to go up on Steam and then have Steam Workshop support and have people add things to it actively and build a whole community around this concept. I think there's, you know, endless stuff to be done with it, and it's still not very far along, honestly, as it is right now, but I'd love to see this continue to be developed. And I will definitely push people in the direction of this developer, of course. If you guys want to go check this out yourself, this alpha version that I played right here for this episode is available to download for free if you would like to try it out. I'd be curious to hear if you guys have any wild experiences the further you get into the progression. Being that I'm only on day 6 now, I think probably if you get to like day 50 or who knows where, things might get much, much stranger. Maybe new areas would even unlock, I'm not sure. So I'll leave that to you to try out, and of course I'm going to come back and probably check in on this again later if it does make some strides towards being more complete. And that's gonna pretty much do it for today's episode. It's really cool to be able to revisit something like this with a proper context now that we're almost 1,000 episodes into the series, to go back to something that didn't quite even fit the theme and actually find a reason to make it work and fit the theme of indie impressions. So I'm happy to be able to cover this, and hopefully you guys find it as interesting as I do. Granted, I have a bit of a soft spot for bizarre, vague, and abstract, dream, trippy, psychedelic games like this, so I only hope that it pushes the boundaries as far as I imagine it could. Anyway, that's going to do it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you leave a like on it. I'll be back again tomorrow for another episode, as I always am. So if you're interested in finding out about a new artistic, original, or unique indie game, make sure you subscribe to the series, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all then. So thanks, everybody, for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic night. Talk to you all later.